So, this is what driver's licenses used to look like in Austria. Quite unhandy, huh? Usually they don't have the edges cut off. Mine is cut off because it's not valid anymore. I got myself a new one. And that's the story of I got my new driver's license. I wanted to change the unhandy driver's license to a new one in credit card format, which I happened to bring here. And I went to the Department of Motor Vehicles in 2008 and got myself a brochure that I read, and I found some rules on how pictures in driver's licenses are supposed to be. And one rule specified that you're not allowed to wear any hats or headgear on your driver's license's pictures, except for religious reasons. I found that's unfair. Why could you wear a headgear for religious reasons? Why can't everybody wear headgear? Equality before the law, right? And that particular exception isn't even covered by law. So this is nothing but preemptive subordination on behalf of freedom of religion. And I wouldn't have to care, because I'm a firm believer myself. I do believe in the flying spaghetti monster. And as a firm believer in the flying spaghetti monster, I picked my favorite pasta strainer and took pictures and went back to the Department of Motor Vehicles to apply for my driver's license. I was wearing my pasta strainer all the time, nothing to conceal. And I had the pasta strainer on my head, I had it on the pictures, the man behind the counter, he didn't say a thing, that the pictures weren't fine. So I applied, they took my application, I went home, waited for my driver's license to be issued. Nothing happened, I waited for weeks. Instead of my driver's license, I received an invitation to go see the public health officer, okay? Went to see the public health officer, and I found out she had to judge on my level of lunacy. And she asked me why I did that. I told her, and she declared me sane immediately. She notified the authorities. I assumed everything's going to be fine now. Went home, waited for my driver's license to be issued. That was in March in 2009. Nothing happened for a month, and I waited, nothing happened. In October of that year, 12th of October, my driver's license was secretly issued. I received no notification thereof and waited. I did forget about the thing, until a friend told me this year in July that my driver's license is already there, because his uncle works at the DMV, and he told him it's ready to be picked up, and I went there and picked it up, and it had my picture on it. And I took that picture when I left the building. I went back to my office, wrote a short blog post on the story, published it on my blog, and I found out the Austrian press agency is reading my blog. They called me. They asked me whether they can send out the picture along with the story, and I told them, go ahead, do it. And what happened was, in the following week, I had about 50 interviews with TV stations, radio stations, online magazines, newspaper all around the globe. The story even went in the Rolling Stone. Something I failed to accomplish with my band. That's not the only thing that happened. 2 weeks ago, somebody posted an event on Facebook, the Pastafari International Headgear Day, October 12th, remember? That's the date the driver's license was issued 2 years ago. And as you can see, these people not only have a refined taste in colanders, sieves, pasta strainers, they're also annoyed. They're annoyed by the same thing I'm annoyed, that freedom of religion is abused to create legal loopholes. And that is a problem, because it violates a basic principle of democracy, and that is equality. Equality before the law, that stipulates that no one is to be discriminated or privileged because of his religion or belief. And of course there are exceptions from equality. If you consider handicapped parking, that's a special right. But that's a special right that has a base in reality. There's a material need for that special right. When it comes to religion, when individuals or organizations ask for special rights, what are they grounded on? They are grounded on holiness. People declare things, thoughts, feelings, behavior as holy and demand for special rights. And these are only subjective claims. And if you consider a few examples, there is, for instance, ritual slaughter, where animals are killed by cutting throats. And I'm no expert in cutting throats, and apparently that's a fun thing to do, and I don't want to spoil the fun. And in Germany, this is considered animal cruelty, and there's laws against it. But exceptions are being made on behalf of religious freedom, because some members of some confessions are allowed to kill animals that way. And that's not the only example. There are plenty more examples. Take this, for instance. That's the kirpan. That's a small knife that is to be carried around by members of the Sikh faith at all times, including children. Children usually have to go to school, so they're supposed to bring the knife to school. And in Canada, the Supreme Court ruled 5 years ago that children are allowed to bring daggers to school. Again, only members of the Sikh faith, not everybody. So, don't get me wrong, it's totally fine to ask for special rights on behalf of religious freedom, but then you have to judge whether these rights can be extended to everyone, so equality is not violated. Very skilled or most skilled actually, in abusing freedom of religion to hold on to special rights, privileges, or even extend those privileges is organized religion. Organized religion needs help, needs somebody to endorse that abuse, and that is state. And very often, state and religion form a type of symbiotic relationship, where state allows for these privileges and in return demands or asks organized religion to admit to the acceptance of certain democratic core values. So it's a trade-off. And that bears the strangest fruit, that type of symbiotic relationship. For example, think of crosses in public schools, like we have in many European countries. In Austria, more than half of the children in a classroom of public school belongs to a Christian faith. A cross must hang on the wall. And the cross is the only religious symbol that has to hang on that classroom wall. And the Austrian Constitutional Court doesn't even consider the cross a religious symbol. And if you're ever in need of a funny circular argument, take this one. It goes a little like this. In Austria, we have a separation of church and state. So if there is a cross in a classroom, it cannot be a religious symbol, but must be a traditional symbol. So Austria is a perfect example for what I call a syncretistic state. That's a prevalent model of the symbiotic relationship between religion and state. The syncretistic state evolved from state religion. There was one dominant religion, and then at some point in time, you may call it the birth of freedom of religion, other religions were tolerated. Some of them were even elevated to that privileged status. The state thus acquiring some sort of neutrality, which is of course only pseudo-neutrality, because state would have to add more and more religions and beliefs to that privileged status to actually have neutrality. As you can see, this is a model that cannot work. The only working model is, of course, if Pastafarianism is state religion. Like in Walcoria. Walcoria is a small island at the coast of New Zealand, and there Pastafarianism is state religion, so everything's fine. I'm not serious. The only actual working model is Laïcité, which is the clean separation of church and state, where religion is considered a private matter and state does not interfere in anything that has to do with religion. So no religion, no belief is privileged or discriminated. This is the model of a state I call agnostic state. Freedom of religion, the term itself is wrong, in my opinion, because religion is only a subcategory of a more universal, larger concept of worldviews, philosophies, ideologies. So, to include, or if you stress religion, you imply a norm. You set a standard, and you force the norm upon others, especially those who don't believe. And to include those who don't believe in the concept of freedom of religion, the term negative freedom of religion was coined. Negative freedom of religion and positive freedom of religion. Essentially meaning positive affiliation with religion, which is just like positive affiliation with race And that doesn't make sense, because it's just like speaking of people who are white and non-white, or black or non-black. And that's absurd, because it's racist, and it's just racist as it sounds. So modern democracies don't categorize by race. They don't categorize by origin, by language, color of their skin, color of their eyes, favorite color. But they do, or some do, categorize because of religion. Austria does. They even want you to, or encourage you to put your religion on your registry certificate. And the question is, why does state do this? What's going to happen with that information? Is that freedom of religion? Is that what freedom of religion was intended for, that you're asked for your religion? No, actually not. The original concept was, in the absence of free choice, that people were free to choose their religion. But over time, that concept of freedom of religion has become corrupted. Now, freedom of religion is something that's self-evident. And the term is actually, or what remains is that the term is used as a tool to blackmail state and society. So, in my opinion, freedom of religion has come to an end, and we should put it to sleep and leave it rest in peace. So let's separate church and state, and thank you.